series of questions and answers. Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Sawati in Jeta's Grove, Anathambindika's Park. Then, when it was evening, the Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita rose from meditation, went to the Venerable Sāriputta and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said to the Venerable Sāriputta, one who is unwise is said, friend, with reference to what is this said, one who is unwise. One does not wisely understand. One does not wisely understand. Friend, that's why it is said one who is unwise. Now remember, when we're talking about wisdom or being wise, we're talking with reference to dependent origination. Okay, all of the links. But also, we're talking about the Four Noble Truths, because the Four Noble Truths are in each one of the links. And what doesn't one wisely understand? One wisely does not understand this is suffering. Now that's a little bit different from the way most people talk about suffering. They say life is suffering, and that is not a correct statement. There's suffering in life. Yeah, we all know that. So, one does not wisely understand this is suffering. One does not wisely understand this is the origin of suffering. One does not wisely understand this is the cessation of suffering. One does not wisely understand this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. One does not wisely understand. One does not wisely understand, friend. That's why it is said, one who is unwise. So when you start looking at this a little bit more closely, he's saying you don't wisely understand suffering. You don't wisely understand the origin or the cessation or the way leading to the cessation. Now what's that saying? It's saying you're not wisely understanding how the links of dependent origination work. Okay, now most of the time when I'm talking to you about dependent origination, I'm just taking a few of the links, and you will be able to see all of the links at some point as you go deeper in your practice. But when you start off, I just talk about feeling is pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. And right after feeling arises, then there is this craving, this tension and tightness. The I am that. I like it, I don't like it mind. Right after that, now you start to get into the verbalization. All of the stories, all of the concepts, all of your opinions. I don't like this feeling. That's an opinion. And it pulls you further and further away from being in the present moment. Now, why do I stress being able to recognize that tension and tightness that arises in your head, in your mind? That's why I have this little guy here, to show you over and over again how when craving arises, it causes this membrane that goes around it to contract. And there's a slight tension and tightness. That is how you recognize the craving. Now, you can relax, but if you have a strong attachment, that craving might not necessarily go away the first time you relax it. But you relax one time, and when you relax and then smile and come back to your object of meditation, you'll go back to that. That feeling will arise again, the craving will be there, and you relax again. Sometimes you might bounce back and forth 5 or 6 times or even 10 times before that attachment, that belief that that feeling is yours personally will start to fade away. And then you'll feel relief. Now, every time you relax and you bring up that wholesome object and come back to your wholesome object of meditation, when you bring up that smile and coming back to your object of meditation, when your mind gets pulled away again, it's not the same phenomena that happens. It's not the same because you've already let it go by relaxing, but it comes up again because there's still attachment in there. Excuse me. So there, every time you relax, there's no thoughts. There's no opinions, there's no ideas. And then you bring up that smile, that wholesome object, and you're on your wholesome object of your object of meditation, and you stay with that as long as you can. Sometimes it's a quarter of a heartbeat before your mind goes back, and there it is again. So what you do is the same thing again. Well, but this doesn't work. Yes, it does. You know it does. You've all experienced that it does. But sometimes an attachment can be real strong, and your belief that it's you can be real strong. So you'll go back and you say, well, it's still there, but it's a different one. It's not the same one because you've already let that one go. Now another one comes up in its place because of your belief in a personal self. So if you have to bounce back and forth for a little while and keep relaxing and smiling and coming back and relax and smile and come back, that's fine. What you don't want to do is let it go and relax, let it go and relax, let it go and relax. The reason you don't want to do that is you're not replacing that unwholesome state with a wholesome state. In other words, you're not practicing all of the right effort. Okay? So you have to have the smile and coming back to your object of meditation every time. Then it will get weaker, and then it will fade away. When it fades away, you feel a sense of relief. And with that relief, your mind becomes peaceful and calm. That's how you go deeper into your meditation. Now, this is a natural process. It's not a forced process. So the more times you can remember to use the 6 R's and not just hang on to this one, I want to investigate it a little bit. No, 6 R. That doesn't necessarily mean whatever that distraction is will go away. but you're not keeping your attention on it. See, when you have something arise, you put your attention on the recognize, and then you change your attention to letting it be there without taking it personally. And then you change your attention back to relax. And then you change your attention back to smiling. And then you change your attention back to your object of meditation and stay with that as long as you can. This method absolutely works. But if you have a strong attachment, your mind's going to go back to that attachment for a little while. So you have to do the same thing again, and again, and again, and again, however long it takes. Now, let's say there's sadness that arises for whatever reason. Okay, you allow that sadness to be. You recognize that it's there. You allow it to be there. Now you relax the tightness caused by your mind's attention getting pulled there. And smile. Come back to your object of meditation. Stay with your object of meditation. That is the way, all the way to the experience of nibana. Okay, that's how it works. Now we talk about the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering. Every time you let go of craving, every time you relax that tension and tightness, and there's that clear mind, and you smile and bring that clear mind back to your object of meditation, you are experiencing the cessation of suffering, the cessation of craving. You are experiencing a mundane kind of nibana. Now you have to experience this mundane nibana many thousands, many hundreds of thousands, and however big the number is, before you will experience the super mundane nibana. So everybody that has this idea, I want to attain nibana, all you have to do is let go of that craving, and you have attained nibana. Okay? This is an important thing to realize, because, well, especially in Asia, everybody has this big pie in the sky, this is nibana, and that's all I want. And it took me a long time to show people that before they actually started hearing it, that they experienced nibana every time they let go of craving and come back to a wholesome object. You're experiencing the Four Noble Truths. And you have to experience it over and over and over again before you realize it. You know, in the Samyutta Nikaya, there's one sutta that talks about the Buddha when he was only a bodhisattva, and how he came up with all of the links of dependent origination, how he thought it through, and what was the cause of this, what is the cause of death? Well, if you're born, then there is death. And what's the cause of being born? Your habitual tendency, and he went through all of the links. Now he knew this intellectually. He still had to practice it. Okay? This is important to realize. He knew all of the links of dependent origination before the night of his realization. And when he saw that that's exactly how it works, that's when he had this, oh, wow. He really understood without any question at all. This is exactly right. So he experienced the supreme nibana, the super-mundane nibana, not from intellectual knowledge, but from realization that that is exactly the way it works. And he saw all of the Four Noble Truths with each one of those links. So this is a real important, this is the heart of the practice. Somebody wrote, Nyanaponika wrote a book, The Heart of Meditation. Mm-hmm. Well, this is the heart of Buddhism. And if you don't understand how these links actually do work, you will not experience the nibana that the Buddha talked about. This is why that relaxed step is so important. Because you keep letting go of the craving. Keep letting it go. And you bring up the wholesome object. So right effort is what you first start learning when you learn about meditation, when you practice with me. And it goes all the way to the end. Now, it's real important to realize that the Buddha's teaching is incredibly simple to understand. It's not always easy to do because of our own attachments and beliefs and opinions and how we think the world actually is as compared with how it really is. And it takes some time for some people to settle down and stop adding little bits of, well, I've done this before, maybe I'll try that. You have to let that go and just practice the 6 R's. That is the key. That's the way. Saying, good friend, the Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Now, Mahā Koṭṭhita was an arahat, and I think he was the one that was foremost of all the monks in sitting in meditation. He was always sitting in meditation. So he asked these questions not necessarily for himself, but just to get clarity so that it can be understood by not only him, but everyone else. Then he asked a further question. One who is wise. One who is wise is said, friend, with reference to what was this said? One who is wise. One wisely understands. One wisely understands, friend. That is why it is said, one who is wise. Now you have to also understand that Sāriputta was second in wisdom to the Buddha. Okay, he was his first chief disciple. So Sāriputta really knew very deeply how all of the links of dependent origination arise and pass away. And he was very good at explaining it, so it was explained in a simple way so that everyone would understand. What does one wisely understand? One wisely understands this is suffering. Every link is suffering. Why? Because it causes disturbance. One wisely understands this is the origin of suffering. What's the origin of suffering? Craving. One wisely understands this is a cessation of suffering. Letting go of that craving. One wisely understands this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. He was talking about the entire eightfold path. And when you practice right effort, you are practicing the entire eightfold path at that time.
There is always the karma, the law of karma to be recognized. It helps, I found out, when I talk about these things.
Well,
because it is the law of karma, there is a cause and there is a karmic effect.
That is true, and
it's shorter. It's a shortcut to
karma is, it means action.
Yeah.
Now, every time you let go of craving, you're making the decision to point your mind towards being pure.
Yeah, there's a recognition in it.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Kind of.
And you're purifying your mind.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is creating huge amounts of good karma every time you let go of that craving. You're letting go of that belief in a personal self. This is my thought, these are my feelings, these are my sensations. And when you start seeing things in an impersonal way, you're purifying your mind and creating huge amounts of good karma.
Yeah.
And that overcomes all past bad karma. That might be a little bit rash saying that.
Yeah.
Because even the Buddha had some past bad karma that caught up with him because he had that sore back. And that was from however Mahā Koṭṭhita's back. He was a wrestler and he made it a habit of breaking other people's backs who is wrestling against. So he had a sore back in his later life. So it doesn't completely overcome every little bit of bad karma. Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit the link between intention and karma? Because I've also seen that the Buddha said that. Intention.
No, you've seen Bhikkhu Bodhi say that.
Mm-hmm.
He changed right thought into right intention, and I absolutely do not agree with that. Because I can have an intention to do something good, but if I don't have the action behind it, then it's just floating stuff. Now, where intention is really important is where you make the decision that this is arising and I'm going to relax and let it go and smile and come back. Now, it takes intention to do that. But it's a better word is decision. You have the choice to do that or not. Okay? Now, there's a lot of people that do meditation, their intention is to purify their mind, but they don't let go of the craving. So their decision, even though their intention is good, their decision doesn't become fulfilled. Okay?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anytime. Okay, one wisely understands. One wisely understands, friend. That's why it is said, one wisely understands. Now, when I was talking about right effort and how that's part of the entire Eightfold Path, I changed the words from the standard write this and write that, and I change it to harmonious. Because if something is right, then there's something that's wrong, and that's black and white. But there's a lot of degrees. So when we do it with harmonious, what we're saying is being in harmony with what actually is true and happening in the present moment. It has a softer feel to it, and there's more leeway in what your understanding is. So the first part of the Eightfold Path is harmonious perspective. They call it right view, but I call it harmonious perspective. What is your harmonious perspective? It is the way you see your thoughts, feelings, sensations, ideas, opinions as being part of an impersonal process. Okay? Now, when you practice right effort, you're letting go of the unwholesome and that craving. So you're letting go of that belief of the self. So you're practicing harmonious perspective. Yeah. I didn't know we had one. I didn't know I was going to do this, actually. Now, the second step in the eightfold, or the second fold of the Eightfold Path, is called normally right thought. But I changed that to say harmonious image. Harmonious imaging, not imagination, imaging. You hold an image of wholesomeness in your mind, you tend towards wholesomeness. You hold an image of never having enough money, then you're always going to be broke. Okay? You hold an image of being a not nice person, then that leaves you the leeway to be a not nice person. It's the image that you're holding of yourself and what you're doing in the present moment. The next step, or the next fold of the Eightfold Path, is right speech, and I really don't like that very much. I call that harmonious communication. Now, the way that a lot of scholars talk about the Eightfold Path, they say we break it up into three things. We break it up into wisdom, we break it up into morality, and concentration. Now, when you practice morality, you're sitting in meditation, you are practicing morality. But that doesn't really agree very much when you take a look at what the Buddha, his first discourse, okay? He was talking to these monks about how you practice meditation, how you develop having an uplifted mind. So every one of these different folds of the Eightfold Path actually are referring to your own practice. So when you have harmonious communication, that encompasses what you think about yourself. Okay? How hard are you on yourself? You're like the normal human being? Pretty hard. We all have this idea of being good and perfect, and then when we make a mistake, how much do we beat ourselves up? I mean, here's an expert at beating himself up.
If you need advice, come to me.
So it's not only the communication with other people, it's the communication that you have with yourself, about yourself, and your actions, and your thoughts, and your speech. So when you get into a harmonious communication, you start having a more loving, accepting mind, especially towards yourself. And one of the things that the Buddha said is anybody that truly loves themselves will never harm another being. So, criticizing yourself, are you loving yourself at that time? No, you're causing yourself suffering because you're believing all those thoughts and opinions and ideas, and you're really hurting yourself. You don't need to do that. Okay, you made a mistake, fine. Welcome to the human race. I don't know of anybody that didn't make a mistake at some point. When you make a mistake, you recognize you make a mistake, then you make a determination, I'm not going to do that again, it hurts. So then you start loving yourself. Okay, I made a mistake, I forgive myself for that. I didn't know. Or I just forgot. Okay, fine. But you can still be happy with yourself. That's harmonious communication. Okay? Now, with the next one, they call it right action. This is part of morality. And I call it harmonious movement. A lot of times, we tend to jerk our mind around, jerk our attention around. And that's not a harmonious kind of movement. A lot of you, how many times have I told you when you come to an interview, you're trying too hard. You're jerking your mind around too much. You're not practicing harmonious movement. Smile more. Relax more. Now you're practicing harmonious movement. See, I told you I was a sneaky monk. I don't always tell you the reasons why I say things. But there is a good reason behind it. The next part of the eightfold path is, they call it right livelihood. I love this one. Well, don't do anything with weapons. And don't do anything with poisons. No, the monks that he was talking to, they were ascetics. Were they messing around with weapons and poisons and things like that? Well, it doesn't make sense. So I call it harmonious lifestyle. What do you put in front of yourself? What do you entertain yourself with? One of my favorite stories was a woman was practicing meditation with me, And she came to me one day and she said, I have these horrible dreams. They're really terrible. What should I do? And I said, why? She said, I don't know. But it always seems to happen after I go to the movies. Oh, what kind of movies are you going to? Well, I love horror movies. Well, look at what you're putting in front of your face. Don't do that. Oh, but I love it. Don't complain to me about your bad dreams. Is that a harmonious lifestyle?
It's for her.
For her.
There's no harmony if she can't sleep. She can't sleep if there's no harmony.
The next part of the Eightfold Path is right effort, which is what I call harmonious practice. And there's 4 parts. There is recognizing when you have an unwholesome state arise. What is an unwholesome state? Any state that you identify with personally. You identify with personally. I am that. That's an unwholesome state. Why is it unwholesome? Because that's craving. You release the unwholesome state and you relax. You bring up a wholesome state, smile, and come back to your object of meditation. That's a wholesome state too. And you stay with that wholesome state for as long as you can. That's right effort. That's your harmonious practice. The next part of the Eightfold Path is a word that's used often in Buddhism, but very seldom is it defined. These are one of these kind of words that if I use this, you know what it means. So I'm not going to bother with it. Right mindfulness. I call it harmonious observation. What is mindfulness? Now, I'm in Asia. I'm with people that have been Buddhist their whole life. They should definitely know what the definition of mindfulness is. And I always get the words, well, it's being aware of what's happening in the present moment. What does that mean? Well, it means being mindful. Can't use that word. That's what we're trying to define. What is mindfulness? Remembering to observe how mind's attention moves from one thing to another. Now, why is this such a good definition? Because it's saying to you that when your mind is on your object of meditation and it got distracted, did you observe how it got distracted? Did you observe the movements of mind's attention? In other words, did you see the links of dependent origination? Did you see that feeling arise and the craving arise and that habitual tendency arise, or the clinging and the habitual tendency and the birth of action and the sorrow and lamentation, pain, grief, and despair? Almost all, but everybody sees that. The last link. But your mind didn't just jump over there. It's very systematic. It does things exactly in the same way all the time. And as I've told you before, everybody in the world, their mind works in exactly the same way. Dependent origination is absolutely universal. It doesn't matter what culture you come from. So, you remember that there was an article, I think it was in Buddha Dhamma magazine. And there were these 3 teachers from different kinds of Buddhism. One of them was a Tibetan, one of them, they were from the MTV, Mahayana Theravada Vajrayana. And they were discussing what mindfulness was. And one of them actually came out and said, mindfulness is remembering to remember to remember. What does that mean? At the end of the article, the guy that wrote the article, he said, I guess we're going to have to continue this conversation on more because we really haven't got what mindfulness means. So mindfulness is a key word, and I have spent a lot of time going to major teachers, incredibly famous meditation teachers, and asking them what mindfulness was, and I never got an answer. And I also went to these different teachers and I said, craving is such a big word in Buddhism. What is it? How do you recognize it? It's desire. So don't desire anything and you're free from craving. Well, how ridiculous is that? And then I give them my definition of craving is it manifests, you can recognize it by tension and tightness in your mind and in your body. And it is the I like it or I don't like it of that feeling. If it's a pleasant feeling, I like it. If it's a painful feeling, I don't like it. Both ways cause tension. That's what craving is. So craving and mindfulness are 2 words that are used a lot but aren't really understood very well. Anyway, the last part of the eightfold path, I call it harmonious collectedness, because right concentration is definitely misunderstood. The word concentration means focused so that your mind is one-pointed and you're only on this idea. Now the problem with that is when people practice one-pointed concentration, their mind is on their object of meditation, it gets distracted. Their instructions, let go of that distraction, come back to your object of meditation immediately. What happens when you do that? You're bringing craving back to your object of meditation, and that makes your mind one-pointed. Now the disadvantage of that is when you get to a certain degree of, quote, concentration, the force of the concentration suppresses the hindrances. And some people today wish that they could do that. But you remember what I was saying last night, that all of your hindrances are showing you where your attachment is. So what you're doing is suppressing attachment. When you get out of that deep concentration state and start living your everyday life, you have all these hindrances come up and you're not even able to recognize it because you've been suppressing it. Now that doesn't happen when you're practicing the way the Buddha's teaching in the suttas. It doesn't happen. Hindrances are going to arise. Welcome to real life. They're going to happen all the time. Right now you're able to see them and how they arise, and you're able to let them go and let go of that craving. You have to have a technique to be able to carry your meditation into your life. That's what I'm showing you. And the easy way to do it, the simple way to do it, smile. That's it. Smile. Why? Because you have joy arise when you smile. When you have joy in your mind is very alert. Your mind is very quick to notice when there is no joy and when that heaviness of attachment grabs onto you. Okay, so smiling improves your mindfulness. Your mindfulness, when it's improved, means that you get to practice your 6 hours with your daily activity, which means that you stop going on this roller coaster ride of emotions, and they get to be less and less, and you start having more balance in your mind, and that leads to contentment. That leads to having a mind that's happy. See how it's all interconnected. So this eightfold path that I'm showing you, when I'm talking about collectedness, I'm talking about being able to experience jhanas. But you're experiencing jhanas with insight in how this arises, how these different things arise. And the insights are always how to let go of the hindrances, the insights in, wow, I just saw how that feeling arose and I got grabbed onto, and it led to these thoughts and opinions and ideas that led it to my habitual emotional tendency, which led to birth of action, which led to a lot of dukkha. And when you see that for yourself, you go, oh, wow. See, this is an oh wow meditation. Every time you have an insight into how these links actually do work, you become more clear, you become more alert, you become more in the present moment. You're not distracted by things. You're not pulled away by your thinking for hours on end. You're not causing yourself suffering. So it's a real important thing to understand that the Eightfold Path, when you smile, you're practicing the Eightfold Path. When you practice the six R's, you're practicing the Eightfold Path. Okay, consciousness. Consciousness is said, friend, with reference to what is consciousness said. It cognizes, friend. That is why consciousness says, What does it cognize? Consciousness cognizes this is pleasant, this is painful. It cognizes this is neither painful nor pleasant. It cognizes, friend. That is why consciousness is said. So consciousness cognizes feeling. Wisdom and consciousness, friend, are these states conjoined or disjoined? And is it possible to separate each of these states from the other in order to describe the difference between them? Interesting question. Wisdom and consciousness, friend, these states that are conjoined, not disjoined. And it is impossible to separate each of these states from the other in order to describe the difference between them. For what one wisely understands, one sees dependent origination, that one cognizes. And what one cognizes, that one wisely understands. That is why these states are conjoined, not disjoined, and it is impossible to separate each of these states from the other in order to describe the difference between them. Now, he just got through saying between wisdom and consciousness, these states that are conjoined, not disjoined, is this. Wisdom is to be developed, and consciousness is to be fully understood. Got it? How do you develop wisdom? By seeing the links as they actually are. And consciousness is to be fully understood. Okay?
So does that mean to see the Four Noble Truths in consciousness?
Of course.
That's what I thought.
See, each one of the links of dependent origination, now there's the big craving that happens right after feeling, but each link has some craving in it. It gets very fine and minute. That's why you have to continually 6R, even though you might see consciousness arise or formations arise, you have to 6R that. Because there's this little tiny, and I'm talking subtle, I am that, attached to each one of the links. And each link has the Four Noble Truths in it, and that's why I can say that. Because if it has the origin of the suffering, that means it has a little bit of craving in each one of the links. Okay?
Question?
Yeah.
So, you said cognizes
Feeling, yeah. Pleasant, painful, neither painful nor
Right, so
pleasant.
that's what my question is about. Pleasant, I can guess at. Painful, I can guess at. Neither pleasant nor painful. Is that a discernible feeling?
Tricky question.
And so, for a moment,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And it's real easy to ignore the neither painful nor pleasant feeling.
A little bit of unconsciousness right there.
Yeah. And when you have equanimity, your mindfulness is there and you're seeing it as equanimity.
Ah, okay, interesting. Now, the pleasant and painful, consciousness is a mental attribute.
So is feeling.
And so is feeling. So the pleasant feeling is not, the painful feeling is not physical pain, it's of a mental kind. It's my assumption.
It manifests that way, but it can turn into a physical painful feeling. I mean, stub your toe and tell me that that's not painful. You know,
Right.
and it is physical, but it's also mental. So you treat both in exactly the same way. Pleasant feeling, the painful feeling. You treat them exactly the same. Neither painful nor pleasant feeling. You treat that exactly the same. 6R.
The pleasant feeling is clearly discernible from other pleasant feelings like joy, equanimity, and so forth. Is that true?
No, it's all pleasant feeling.
They are all pleasant feelings.
Yeah. And when you
Okay.
allow the pleasant feeling to be there by
Good.
not keeping your attention on it and
Good.
relaxing, now you're taking it away from the personal nature of it.
That's tricky.
Okay.
That's very good.
Did you just say that equanimity was a pleasant feeling?
Sure.
Of course it is.
It is.
But it's an impersonal pleasant feeling.
Unless you think this is pleasant, I like it.
Uh,
Then you're stuck.
Do the thing with, wait a minute.
But isn't it?
Equanimity and difference. Do the difference between those two.
you do it.
The finer point is like the difference between, what's the difference between equanimity and indifference?
Well, one is there is a consciousness about what's happening, where indifference is ignoring whatever it is.
Oh.
That's close to it.
Yeah.
The equanimity has mindfulness, indifference has no mindfulness. You really.
That was close.
And that's the
Did I
danger
get that
of
point?
7 points.
and that's the danger of neither pleasant nor painful feeling.
Last night in the Sutta, the Buddha said when he reached equanimity that he had, and I forget the word that he used to describe equanimity. He had I forget, maybe some of you would remember and it seemed to be it seemed to describe equanimity,
120.
a non-differing mind or something. Maybe I'm imagining.
Perception.
Hmm?
Perceptions of pleasant abiding.
Boy, I wish I knew where you were talking about.
I'll look at I'll get back with you.
Okay.
Question.
But it seems to me, I mean, the point is that equanimity, as equanimous, an equanimous state is one of mental equipoise.
Yeah.
And it's neither pleasant nor unpleasant.
Right.
It is.
But that in
It's always
itself
pleasant.
is pleasant.
So, yeah, because the equipoise is no craving.
There's
Right.
no craving in it.
Less and less and less craving.
Okay,
Seems to
all
be
right.
craving.
All right. Okay, you get a point.
But it's impersonal. It's not I am
That's
feeling
right.
pleasant. It's pleasantness is happening.
Pleasant.
Something. I'm not sure how to phrase it.
Just like
Well,
the-
there's no suffering that's happening. Okay, so wisdom is to be developed and consciousness is to be fully understood. Feeling. Feeling is said, friend, with reference to what is feeling said. It feels. It feels, friend. That is why feeling is said. What does it feel? It feels pleasure, it feels pain, it feels neither pain nor pleasure. It feels, friend. That is why feeling is said. Perception. Perception is said, friend, with reference to what is perception said. What is perception? Perception is the naming of things. Anytime, these are glasses. Your mind says glasses. Now, glasses are a concept. Where are the glasses? Is it the earpiece? Is it the frame? Is it the glass? Is it the screw that holds this all together? Glasses, everything that we think in words is concepts. In other words,
I did
perception.
that exercise today. I spent a long time on it, and I don't know where the chair was that I was looking at. I went through that exercise, and I came up. Go ahead and start loading your guns and shooting me down on this one. I said, okay, the chair has legs on it, and so on and so forth. And I went through taking the chair apart, putting it together, and then I decided that this chair is all the parts that I can see, but it is a specific instance of the thing in my head called chair. This is a concrete example of it.
Right.
And so this chair is the thing. Then I went the other way and remembered about when blind people suddenly get vision later in life and they start seeing things. Nothing is identifiable because they haven't put the forms together with the apparatus.
Right.
And so I'm starting to figure it out, guys. So when you develop the apparatus that enables you to understand what it is you're seeing in terms of an instance of anything, you are applying that functional label to it, no matter what, in order to differentiate that from the background, from the sides, from the top, from the bottom, from everything else.
And
that's the means.
That is perception.
I was trying to disagree, but as I talked...
It's exactly precisely perception.
Yeah. So without names, it's all background detail without anything that you can extract as the thing.
Arm, leg, wood, rock, you, me, I.
have no idea why I'm resisting
But
this so much,
they're all concepts.
They're all concepts.
There isn't any word.
We think in concepts. I mean, that's the way we do. We can't do it any other way. What is nibana? It's a state of no concept.
Yeah. For me, it's a concept. It is. Okay,
Until you experience it.
Yeah,
and
until
then-
I experience it.
And then it's no concepts. Okay.
So, Bhante,
Yeah.
would it be fair to say that perception is that process that, just in terms of mind and mind object, is a mental process that leads to naming, while anything that's connected with the other 5 sense doors are a process that relates to, that is internal and external, that leads to naming?
That's too complicated.
Well, I was just differentiating between internal and external, but it's the process that leads to naming.
Yes.
tell always, the Buddha seems to be relating this to practice. This is how it affects a person. This isn't an abstract thought or a concept or a theory. This is how you react to this stuff. This is what people do.
This is the way the human being sees the world. Okay, if you want to call that reacting to stuff, I guess you can.
Yeah, it's not like Platonic abstracts,
No.
perfect forms that exist that you can model and work with. This is the way people react. This is the way mind works.
And when you start responding, you still have perception, but it doesn't cloud the way you see the world so much. And this is why getting into the state of the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness is a desirable state to get in, because there's no disturbance at all. Perception causes, even at the highest states, there is some perception and it causes some vibration, causes some disturbance in your mind. And when that ceases, and of course feeling is going to cease, and so is consciousness, so that's a purest state that your mind can get into on the mundane. It's not super mundane. It is mundane. You'll see
There's
this
just,
in a minute.
maybe it's just a matter of semantics, but there is, I think, a difference between perception and conceptualization, because, for example, from where I'm sitting, I can perceive a portion of the chair that you're sitting on, but I can't see the fourth leg. So from just only sensory perception, I'd only see a portion of it. But the conception enables me to complete what I don't actually see. And then,
This is concepts all the way. And that's what perception does, is it causes the concepts to arise.
It works because perception has memory. And you learned a long time ago that was a chair, so if you see just part of it, you can, when you're walking in a room, there's a chair. You see, from
This is
the memory
right.
part of it.
Perception's not always right, necessarily, right? I mean,
Not necessarily. Anyway. Okay, with reference to what is perception said, it perceives. It perceives. That's why perception is said. What does it perceive? Now, the way that he's describing it is in colors. It perceives blue, it perceives yellow, it perceives red, it perceives white. But it's putting a name on these different colors so that we can all agree that that's what this is. That's basically what it boils down to. Feeling, perception, and consciousness, friend, are these conjoined or disjoined? And is it possible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them? Feeling, perception, and consciousness, friend, these states are conjoined, not disjoined. And it is impossible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them. Now listen closely. For what one feels, that one perceives. And what one perceives, that one cognizes. That's how they're conjoined. Now, think of the 5 aggregates. You have body, you have feeling, you have perception, You have formations and you have consciousness. Now, the 5 aggregates are actually 3 aggregates. Body, formations, and the feeling, perception, and consciousness is conjoined.
One more time, please.
I don't know if I can do it again. Okay, you have body, feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness, which is actually 3 aggregates, not 5, because feeling, perception, and consciousness are conjoined. So you have the 5 aggregates or 3 aggregates because you have these that are conjoined, you have formations, and you have body.
And he does that in a couple suttas too.
Oh,
He uses it.
that's real tricky. So I'm going to say this again so you get it. What one feels, that one perceives. And what one perceives, that one cognizes.
One more time.
Yeah.
Just one more time.
So when you feel it, it's like, dislike, neither like nor dislike.
That's the perception, isn't it?
That's the first part.
The feeling arises, but you have to be able to perceive and cognize all at the same time, really.
Right.
That's why they're conjoined.
The feeling was painful or pleasant. It wasn't I like it or I don't like it. The
Oh, I'm
feeling
sorry.
was
Yes,
just
you're
pleasant.
exactly right. You're exactly right.
Okay.
I have a disordered mind. Yes, they all have to arise in order for them to manifest.
Right.
And one can't exist without the other two.
That's why they're conjoined.
But you can show the different aspects of them, but they are conjoined, yes, I understand.
I kind of get a kick out of including feeling and cognition. And you can't really describe one without the other to be accurate.
It's tough because you don't know what they're assuming either when they write
Well,
about the reader. You know, what are they assuming?
anyway. Okay, for what one feels, that one perceives. And what one perceives, that one cognizes. That is why these states are conjoined, not disjoined, and it is impossible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference. Friend, what can be known by purified mind consciousness, released from the 5 faculties? Nothingness. It can be known that there is nothing. Friend, with what does one understand a state that can be known? One understates a state that can be known with the eye of wisdom. What is the eye of wisdom? Huh?
Seeing independent origination.
Kind of. The eye of wisdom is seeing without any craving. That's the eye of wisdom. Oh, thanks. If I am there, that clouds the way I see things because I'm identifying with it, which leads to clinging, which leads to your habitual tendencies, which leads to the rest of the dependent origination. But when you let go of craving, you're developing your eye of wisdom, in other words, being able to see how those links interact with each other. She's only heard the sutta.
No, but I just put together.
25 times.
So when you're releasing and relaxing and you're returning with pure mind, you're activating the space to see with wisdom's eye.
Yes.
So that section is connected.
Yes, of course.
Oh.
Me too.
That's good. That's cool.
If there's no
wonder the
craving,
practice
are you really seeing the process, or the process is just happening? Like you are the process. You are the links.
Not personally.
Yeah.
You're outside.
It's like all there is the links.
Right.
Yeah.
You're outside the movie. You're in the audience now. You're not in the movie anymore. You're seeing the movie without
See,
you
when
in
you
it.
let go of craving, clinging will not arise.
Mm-hmm.
And if clinging doesn't arise, habitual tendency doesn't arise. If habitual tendency doesn't arise, the birth of action doesn't arise. If the birth of action doesn't arise, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair don't arise.
So in this case, in seeing, when the object and the I, it's not the basis and condition for the next step, it's just the seeing. Could have said that.
I thought I did.
Could have heard that.
I was trying to prove it. Sounded better when I said it.
Okay. Friend, what is the purpose of wisdom? That's a decent question. The purpose of wisdom, friend, is direct knowledge. Its purpose is full understanding. Its purpose is abandoning. Its purpose is getting to the unconditioned state, letting go of each one of those links until there's no more phenomena arising. See why I like this sutta?
It's meaty.
Oh yeah. And I always wait till you've had some experience before I start talking about this. Friend, how many conditions are there for the arising of right view? Interesting question. Friend, there are two conditions for the arising of right view. The voice of another person and wise attention.
That's very good.
You wouldn't understand dependent origination if the Buddha didn't tell us. It's his voice. It's not mine. I'm nothing. It's the Buddha's voice showing us how all of this stuff actually does work. But you have to have the responsibility of wise attention. You have to have the direct experience. Friend, how many factors is right view assisted? By how many factors is right view assisted? When it has deliverance of mind for its fruit, deliverance of, I don't like the way you wrote that. When he has deliverance of mind for the path and deliverance of mind for with the fruit and path. When it has deliverance of mind by wisdom for its path and deliverance by wisdom for its path and fruition. Friend, right view is assisted by 5 factors when it has deliverance of mind for its path, deliverance of mind for its fruition and path and fruition. When it has deliverance of mind by wisdom for its path and deliverance of by wisdom for its path and fruition. Here, friend, right view is assisted by virtue, keeping your precepts, and insight. Got to have both of them, and they do go together. They are conjoined, not disjoined, as is being taught right now with straight vipassana or one-pointed concentration. Right view, assisted by these 5 factors, has deliverance of mind for its path, deliverance of mind for its path and fruition. It has deliverance by wisdom for its path, and deliverance by wisdom for its path and fruition. Friend, how many kinds of being are there? Now, being here is bhava, which I am calling habitual tendency. There are 3 kinds of being: sense sphere being, fine material being, and immaterial being. So it's talking about having a physical body, fine material realm. It can be the Devalokas, the Brahmalokas, and it can also mean the material jhanas. First jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. The immaterial jhanas, immaterial being. Now that can mean the high Brahmalokas, the realm of infinite space, consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. Or it can mean these 4 different realms while you're doing your meditation. How is renewal of being in the future generated? How is your habitual tendency being generated? Renewal of being in the future is generated through the delighting in this and that on the part of beings who are hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. Okay, craving is a fetter. Now, craving isn't particularly strong. It is particularly persistent. I mean, a simple thing with craving is just let it be. You can let it go. Relax. It keeps coming back. over and over and over and over and over. So that makes you work until you learn how to stay with your object of meditation with strong mindfulness. Friend, how is renewal of being in the future not generated? With the fading away of ignorance, with the arising of true knowledge, and the cessation of craving. Renewal of being in the future is not generated. So what does that really mean? It means seeing the links of dependent origination and relaxing into those links and letting those links fade away. 6R. Okay. Friend, what is the first jhana? Here, friend, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states. A monk enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thinking and examining thought, with joy and happiness born of seclusion. This is called the first jhana. Friend, how many factors does the first jhana have? Friend, the first jhana has 5 factors. Here, when a monk has entered upon the first jhana, there occur thinking, examining thought, joy, happiness, and unification of mind. That is how the first jhana has 5 factors. Friend, how many factors are abandoned in the first jhana and how many factors are possessed? Friend, in the first jhana, 5 factors are abandoned and 5 factors are possessed. Here, when a monk has entered upon the first jhana, sensual desire is abandoned. Ill will is abandoned. Sloth and torpor are abandoned. Restlessness and anxiety are abandoned. Doubt is abandoned. And there occur thinking, examining thought, joy, happiness, and unification of mind. That is how the first jhana has 5 factors that are abandoned and 5 factors that are possessed. Friend, these 5 faculties each have a field, a separate domain, and do not experience each other's field and domain. That is the eye faculty, the ear faculty, the nose faculty, the tongue faculty, and the body faculty. You don't smell through your ears. Okay, that's basically what it's saying. Each one has its own domain. You have your seeing, your hearing, your tasting, your smelling, your touching.
Now, the Buddha, it said, once had a monk that had an interpenetration of the senses. In a sense,
That
it's
sounds
synesthesia.
real Mahayana to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not a...
It could be a neurological problem,
Yeah.
because those exist, but they have to do with strokes or weird connections. Yeah.
He praised this fairly highly. But you're right, it's a Mahayana, because those are the sutras I know. Is that a bad word here?
Well, see, the thing with the difference between Theravada and Mahayana is Theravada has the tendency to go by the older texts. And the Mahayana, they tend to take their commentaries and put them in the suttas and then say, okay, that's what the Buddha said, and this is the modern way to understand the Buddha's teaching. So it gets kind of diluted a little bit.
And they have all the translation, you're 3 translations away. So you go from Pali to Sanskrit to Chinese to their stuff in their old religions and mix it together, and then you come up with suttas. And you look at the online.
It's like that story,
It's
the
pretty
Mahayana story that the Zen love to tell about Kassapa and the Buddha and the flower.
Oh yeah, great
Okay,
story.
that's nowhere in the suttas. That is so that their form of practice has this mind-to-mind transmission, and is justifying that, but that is not in the suttas.
So you say I've been studying revisionist history?
A little bit. I got a kick. I was at the San Diego, and I read this article in the San Diego Union about this reporter that went to do a Zen retreat. And he said, every morning we got up and did our chanting. And it was the English version of the Japanese version of the Korean version of the Chinese version of the Sanskrit version of the original Pali.
Yeah.
Now, you know anything about language, going from one language to another is very difficult.
Yeah.
Because it loses something.
Yeah, in some cases, they freely admit this is Dharani. This may as well be a magic formula. Nobody knows what it means.
Yeah.
Sounds nice.
So going back to the original is a desirable thing.
I take my question back.
Anyway. Now, these 5 faculties each have a separate field, a separate domain, not experiencing each other's field and domain. What is their resort? What experiences their fields and domains? Friend, these 5 faculties each have separate field and a separate domain, and do not experience each other's field and domain. That is the eye faculty, ear, nose, tongue, and body faculty. Now these 5 faculties each have a separate field, a separate domain, not experiencing each other's field and domain. They have mind as their resort. Mind experiences these fields and domain. Friend, as to these 5 faculties, that is the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body faculty, what do these faculties stand in dependence on? Now we get real tricky. Friend, as to these 5 faculties, that is the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body faculty, these 5 faculties stand in dependence on vitality. Okay? Friend, what does vitality stand in dependence on? Vitality stands in dependence on heat. Friend, what does heat stand in dependence on? Heat stands in dependence on vitality. I love it. Just now, friend, we understood the Venerable Sāriputta to have said vitality stands in dependence on heat. And now we understand him to say heat stands in dependence on vitality. How should the meaning of these statements be regarded? A reasonable question. In that case, friend, I shall give you a simile, for some wise men here understand the meaning of a statement by means of a simile. Just as when an oil lamp is burning its radiance is seen independence on its flame, and its flames is seen in dependence on radiance. So too, vitality stands in dependence on heat, and heat stands in dependence on vitality. So if you have a lamp and you light it, you have radiance, but the radiance is dependent on the flame. And the flame is in dependence on the radiance. Can't have one without the other.
But he's not using the word conjoined here.
Not using the word conjoined.
It's not a person.
No. Okay, now we're going to talk about vital formations. Are vital formations things that can be felt, or are vital formations one thing and things that can be felt another? Vital formations, friends, are not things that can be felt. If vital formations were things that can be felt, then a monk who has entered upon the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness would not be seen to emerge from it. But because vital formations are one thing, and things that can be felt another, a monk who has entered upon the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness can be seen to emerge from it. Okay?
So does that mean that the body continues to, the heart beats and
very
everything
slowly
functions, but those factors of dependent origination cease?
If it has no feeling, no perception, and no consciousness, there is no links of dependent origination,
Right.
is there?
That's what I meant
Right.
in the statement. But does the body continue to have its vital
I'll
function?
show you in just a moment. Friend, when this body is bereft of how many states, is it discarded and forsaken, left lying senseless like a log? Friend, when the body is bereft of 3 states, vitality, heat, and consciousness, it is then discarded and forsaken, left lying senseless like a log. Friend, what is the difference between one who is dead, who has completed his time, and a monk who has entered upon the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness? Friend, in the case of one who is dead, one who has completed his time, his bodily formations have ceased and subsided. His verbal formations have ceased and subsided. His mental formations have ceased and subsided. His vitality is exhausted and his heat has dissipated. And his faculties are fully broken up. In the case of a person who has entered upon the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, his bodily formations have ceased. Okay? That means even the heartbeat stops. His verbal formations have ceased and subsided. His mental formations have ceased and subsided. But his vitality is not exhausted. His heat has not been dissipated. And his faculties become exceptionally clear. This is the difference between one who is dead, who has completed his time, and a monk who has entered upon the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. When somebody can experience the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, they are radiant. And it is very noticeable that there's something really different about this person. And you see in a lot of the Christian artwork the kind of halo that goes around the head. Well, when somebody experiences a cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness, it's not limited to the head. The whole body becomes radiant. And if you happen to run across anybody like that, it's a real good thing to give them something. Why? Because they are exceptionally pure. And a gift to them makes a lot of merit for you. It's a good thing. Okay, friend, how many conditions are there for the attainment of neither painful nor pleasant deliverance of mind? There are 4 conditions for the attainment of neither painful nor pleasant deliverance of mind. This is talking about the 4th jhana. Here, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and the previous disappearance of joy and grief, a monk enters upon and abides in the 4th jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. These are the 4 conditions for the attainment of neither painful nor pleasant deliverance of mind. Friend, how many conditions are there for the attainment of the signless deliverance of mind? The signless deliverance of mind is the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. There are no signs. Here, there are 2 conditions for the attainment of the signless deliverance of mind. Non-attention to all signs, and attention to the signless element. Okay? These are the 2 conditions for the attainment of the signless deliverance of mind. Now, friend, how many conditions are there for the persistence of the signless deliverance of mind? Friend, there are 3 conditions for the persistence of the signless deliverance of mind. Non-attention to all signs, attention to the signless element, and the prior determination of its duration. Now, the only people that can purposefully get into the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness is an anagami or an arahat. In other words, the 3rd and 4th stages of awakening. But, and we have to put a little asterisk here, when you're practicing meditation and you go through all of the different jhanas, you will get to a place where you can experience the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. That's not nibana. That's not the super mundane nibana, but it is close. You won't be in that state very long. You'll be in that state, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like that. When you come out of that state, now you will see the links of dependent origination and how they arise, and you will see how they cease. And with that understanding, there is, oh wow, there's nibana.
Is that in the sutta? Oh wow.
Well, it's kind of an ad lib on
Yeah.
that. That's how you experience nibana. That is the only way you can experience nibana. Through your understanding. That's why you hear me continually talking about dependent origination and the links and how they work. Preparing you so that you can be able to see each one of those links for yourself. Is it possible in this lifetime? Absolutely. Okay? But when you're an anagami, you can make the determination. Now, when I told you before you go to sleep, I want you to make the determination on what time you wake up to the second. If you do this, you will get your body clock in tune, and you'll be able to make a determination, I'm going to sleep for 3 hours and 10 minutes. And you go to sleep and you wake up in 3 hours and 10 minutes. Now, that's only a lightweight kind of determination. The kind of determination an anagami makes is, I've got this time. I've got 4 days and 12 hours, 4.5 days. And I want to sit in the cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness for exactly 4 hours, or 4 days and 12 hours. And then they will sit in meditation and they will go into that state. There's not any movement, there's not any breathing, there is just body sitting there. And after 4 days and 12 hours, because of that strong determination, they open up their eyes, get up, and start doing whatever they have to do. But they become super radiant. So that's the time you want to find them and give them something. Give them food, give them any kind of requisite.
That was the question I had, is what would be an appropriate gift? I have no idea.
Well, there are 4 requisites that you give to a monk. Food, medicine, clothing, a place to stay.
And Bhante, if they're anagamis and not monastic yet,
So?
still those 4 requisites? Or
Yeah, sure. Everybody needs them.
and-
You
in
need
addition-
food, you need clothing, you need a place to stay, you need medicine. So it's appropriate for anybody. Okay? So you have to make this determination if you happen to become an anagami and you want to have some rest, relief. Think about it. You don't even have consciousness arising, so there's no disturbance at all. Nothing will bother you. Absolutely nothing while you're in that state.
Why don't they use that instead of sleep? We should just do it on a nightly basis for a few hours.
I don't know how to answer that.
I guess we'll find out later.
Become an anagami and then you tell me.
Put it on my
Okay,
to-do
you've
list.
got a few more days for retreat.
Just try really hard. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All-nighter?
These are the three conditions for the persistence of the signless deliverance of mind. How many conditions are there for the emergence from the signless deliverance of mind? There are two conditions for the emergence from the signless deliverance of mind. Attention to sight and non-attention to this, signless element. Friend, the immeasurable deliverance of mind. What is the immeasurable deliverance of mind? What I am teaching you right now. The Brahma Viharas. Starting with loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. The deliverance of mind through nothingness. Another thing I'm showing you. Through the Brahma Viharas. The deliverance of mind through voidness. The Mahayana are very big on emptiness.
Got a lot of it.
But the definitions are the things that I go after most. You'll see what the definition of voidness is here. The signless deliverance of mind. Are these states different in meaning and different in name? Or are they one in meaning and different in name only? The immeasurable deliverance of mind, the deliverance of mind through nothingness, the deliverance of mind through voidness, the signless deliverance of mind. There is a way in which these states are different in meaning and different in name, and there is a way in which they are one in meaning and different in name only. What, friend, is a way in which these states are different in meaning and different in name? Here a monk abides pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, around, and everywhere as to himself. Sound familiar, like the instructions I gave? He abides pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. He abides pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness. He abides pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with joy. He abides pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with equanimity. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, around, and everywhere, and to all as to himself. He abides providing the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. This is called the immeasurable deliverance of mind. And what, friend, is the deliverance of mind through nothingness? Excuse me. Here, with the complete surmounting of the base of infinite consciousness, aware that there is nothing. A monk enters upon and abides in the base of nothingness. This is called the deliverance of mind through nothingness. And what, friend, is the deliverance of mind through voidness? Here a monk, gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or an empty hut, reflects thus: this is void of self, or of what belongs to self. So what we're talking about with emptiness and with voidness is seeing the impersonal nature in everything.
So as far as I know, in every Zen temple throughout the world, we quote we chant the Heart Sutra, or we chant the Sino-Japanese sound-alikes for the Heart Sutra, or both, or whatever it is. And the teaching that I have, almost as the canonical sutra, is the Heart Sutra. Avalokiteshvara, while doing deep prajna paramita, clearly saw the emptiness of all five conditions. Form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form.
Oh, I love that statement. Give me your wallet.
No.
Yeah.
I'll take your money out. It's the same thing as having money in, right? No, I'm being serious.
I understand completely.
And
I
that
also.
doesn't, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, and it absolutely does not agree with the Buddha's teaching on voidness.
It's a real clash.
I'll give you that sutta soon.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have as background, unassailable information I can toss out right now. I certainly don't want to, defend a position that I don't know how to defend.
Right.
That there's no point to that, but
Right.
I thought I would at least bring it up.
Yeah.
I've heard it explained, but that's not
yes.
what it says. That's how it's explained.
Right.
That's very different.
Right. And it doesn't agree with what the Buddha was teaching. That is the part that is most important. And when I read you about the voidness sutta, you'll see what I'm saying.
It may or may not agree, and I'll take your word for it. Certainly, the thing that I find uncomfortable about it is it seems to knock Sāriputta.
Yes.
And it's just, what's up with that?
That's one of the things that I had a lot of trouble with a lot of Mahayana suttas, is they would say, well, these are only Theravada or arahats, and they didn't want the higher teaching. If they're arahats, they don't need the higher teaching.
Yeah, I don't know.
There is no such a thing as a higher teaching in the Buddha's teaching.
Yeah.
And I have been criticized for teaching her the higher teaching when I was teaching her how dependent origination works. I got scolded by a senior monk. Why are you teaching her that? Well, because she can understand it. There's no secret teachings in Buddhism.
Dependent origination is, I don't know if this is too strong a statement, so take it with a grain of salt. Actively discouraged thinking, discussing, and teaching in the
Yes.
Zen world.
That's because
Absolutely.
You agree with that? Because that was my impression. I can't, but I brought it up once or twice. That was more than enough for me.
Because they don't understand it very well. So they say, no, that's nothing. Don't do that.
They were less generous.
Yes, I understand. Okay. This is a deliverance of mind through voidness. And what, friend, is the signless deliverance of mind? Here, with the non-attention to all signs, a monk enters upon and abides in the signless collectedness of mind. This is called the signless deliverance of mind. This is a way in which these states are different in meaning and different in name. And what, friend, is a way in which these states are one in meaning and different in name only? Lust is a maker of measurement. Hate is a maker of measurement. Delusion is a maker of measurement. In a monk whose taints are destroyed, these are abandoned, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with, so that they can are no longer subject to future arising. Of all the kinds of immeasurable deliverance of mind, the unshakable deliverance of mind is pronounced the best. Now that unshakable deliverance of mind is void of lust, void of hate, and void of delusion, void of craving. Lust is a something. Hate is a something. Delusion is a something. In a monk whose taints are destroyed, these are abandoned, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with, so that they are no longer subject to future arising. Of all the kinds of deliverance of mind through nothingness, the unshakable deliverance of mind is pronounced the best. Now that unshakable deliverance of mind is void of lust, void of hate, void of delusion. Lust is a maker of signs. Hate is a maker of signs. Delusion is a maker of signs. In a monk whose taints are destroyed, these are abandoned, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with, so that they are no longer subject to future arising. Of all the kinds of signless deliverance of mind, the unshakable deliverance is pronounced the best. Now that unshakable deliverance of mind is void of lust, void of hate, void of delusion. This is the way in which these states are one in meaning and different in name only. That is what the Venerable Sāriputta said. The Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita was satisfied and delighted in the Venerable Sāriputta's words.
I like Sāriputta. I like him.
He's a good guy. Yeah. There's no getting around it. He was a good guy. So, does anybody have any questions, comments, statements?
At the risk of making too fine a point of what you were speaking of earlier, whereas a feeling arises, and these I'm not sure exactly how you said it, but it was dependent. No, it wasn't dependent. It co-committed with perception.
Oh,
Conjoined.
With
Yeah.
perception.
Feeling, perception,
And
consciousness.
consciousness.
And was
Consciousness.
and consciousness. Yes.
Right.
So, but the first was feeling arose before perception, and then consciousness arose following
Right.
perception
Right.
in that order.
Right.
And it would seem to me that perception would come before feeling, and then consciousness.
No.
You have to evaluate.
You have to feel in order to have a name for that feeling.
But what
And then you have to be conscious of that.
I had trouble with it too, because what are the three components of contact? The I forms,
Right.
the I informs.
It's not that we're not discussing the same thing. We're talking apples and oranges right now.
And then two different, okay, I see what you're saying.
But, I mean, my point there is, with seeing, you need an external form, an eye, and perception.
No, and
And
consciousness.
consciousness, and then perception arises.
No, perception is in that. And
When
so is
the
feeling, to
when
be
the
quite
three
honest.
conjoin, and then perception arises. There's contact.
No, you're saying, that's,
But
Okay, so
they're
I'm confused, let's just say that.
there's the I
Just
and
when
forms.
you started out
I
again.
can do it, I can do it.
okay.
There's the I and forms and I consciousness. The meeting of the three is eye contact. But you just learned that, that consciousness, perception, and feeling are conjoined. So when the consciousness occurred, remember how fast this is happening.
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
to
of
look
course.
at neurologically how fast this is happening.
Right.
The perception happens and the feeling and consciousness, it's all happening like right against each other. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
But when he breaks it down, and this is what he means by apple and oranges, if we're talking dependent origination, we go back to the chart, you have to break it out into the links,
Yes.
and you can do that too.
So it doesn't follow the links, per se. It's a conjoined rather than a sequence.
Well, there's no perception in
Yeah.
the
I
links of
understand
dependent
that.
origination.
But look, see, you have to understand, if you didn't have
But there is
contact
perception.
happen, you wouldn't have feeling.
Right.
That's where the links come in. That's what he's trying to say to me. This is apples and oranges, and I agree with him. Very delicate set.
Goodness.
It's a very
How about
delicate,
that?
but it's a delicately seen apples and oranges. It's not clear. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
my
right,
problem.
okay.
That's the reason for the question. I think I need to sit with this and let it.
But you need to have the chart sitting there, and then you need to have the three of them in the molecule sitting
I'm
here.
really confused on that too, actually, if you can explain.
I just spent 2.25 hours.
No, because, dependent origination, the consciousness, and then feeling later, but now it is called.
I'm going to
No, we
make a
didn't change it.
determination to understand this
Okay.
in the morning.
Good.
Okay, at breakfast I'll sit down and show it to you outside the kitchen. On the link chart, end with the molecule
Okay.
of the three pieces, and you'll understand it, I
Okay.
promise.
But hopefully by then I'll understand it and can explain it to you.
This could happen.
But I think your
Definitely could
idea of
happen.
sitting with a chart, that's what I did a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
To learn it, I just sat with a chart, did it step by step, 12 steps forward and backward, spent most of the day on it, and it
Understand the conjoining with perception, that's the issue.
yeah, and you're cutting at a new level each time.
Yeah,
You have to see it too.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but there's no perception in the links of dependent origination. But perception is there. How's that?
Yes, it's interesting.
Perception's an aggregate.
I mean, you have to try and meditate and get deep.
The perception's an aggregate. And consciousness and feeling too, in terms of the aggregates.
What is an aggregate? What's the definition of aggregate?
Pieces put together.
Are you asking me or them?
It's
a bunch.
component.
A bunch.
That's
Aggregates.
Heap.
a compilation,
Components of the,
a matrix.
components of the being.
It's like 5 separate bags.
Yeah, 5 bunches.
Bunches. Bunches. That's the word.
Yeah.
Bunches are good.
You can almost smell the thinking in the room.
Yeah.
No almost about it.
I had a question though, before we move on. So if I perceive a similar object or a similar thing several times in a row, does the same kind of feeling arise with that perception, or can that vary over? Because perception and consciousness and feeling are like joined, right? So I imagine.
Okay, look at it this way.
Mm-hmm.
When one of the 6 sense doors arises,
Mm-hmm.
there is a subtle kind of feeling that arises with that.
Mm-hmm.
With that is perception and consciousness.
That's
Mhm.
true. Yeah.
I understand that part. So what I'm trying to understand is like if say the same red dot would appear, you would experience that twice, say first now and then 5 seconds later.
There's no same red dot.
No, I understand that, but it's not gonna. It's because perception is continuously classifying these objects that arise, right?
It's naming.
It's naming. It's like, oh, there's the red dot again. So, does the feeling arise with that red dot? Is that similar for each of these experiences, or could that coloring of that?
Depends on the individual.
No, I understand that, but for the same individual,
It can
Oh,
never,
it
be,
depends.
never be the same.
right.
How could it be the same?
It depends.
I don't know
You
what's
can,
never
you
the
can
same.
you can look at the red dot and you can be happy seeing it and it brings up pleasure. And 5 seconds later you can look at the red dot and not like it and bring up pain. Or you can like it and bring up pleasure.
There's a lot of moments.
Yeah.
It's real hard to get the same guy twice and the same dot twice.
Well,
Sure. But what I'm
Same
getting
conditions.
after is like
Right.
somehow this relates to what arises later on is habitual tendencies, right? So a similar experience, you will start to classify me and start to act in the same way because, hey, this type of feeling arose, so I'm going to solve the problem that I'm experiencing with this habitual tendency.
right. And the
Right.
habitual tendency is almost always trying to think the
Mhm.
feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps assuming on what happened before you triggers at the assumption part. Yeah.
So, okay, understood. So, as we are letting go of these hindrances, right? What I clearly noticed, I let go of an attachment, like that particular reaction I will not experience again, or that particular type of way of dealing.
Not in the same way because you don't have that craving.
Right,
You're lessening and lessening and lessening and lessening.
right, exactly. So now, because of that, like a similar experience like that,
And that's what personality development is all about.
I see. So we're making these measurements all the time, right? I'm like, now this, and it's just a collection of these measurements is like who I am, quote unquote.
Well, we've been doing that from time immemorial.
This is so
Part
interesting.
and parcel.
We've been doing that since time immemorial, forever.
I am still with feeling, since you mentioned it, that perception is no aspect in the 12 originations. So that lets me kind of realize maybe it is the feeling is more a different, well, let me think it, is not really to take literally. It's no feeling. It's more a degree perhaps of understanding, or if refinedness more of understanding. Then otherwise they would have put it into in factor as perception maybe in the origination.
That I think is kind of tricky about this.
No, yes,
Is you have feeling and craving, okay?
yes.
And you still have feeling and craving with the other links as they come up. So these two are what you would call the gross feeling and craving, and the other links that still have some feeling and craving in it are the subtle
Yes.
feeling and craving.
Bhante, can I talk? Can I mention?
Yeah.
suffering. I was kind of, they called it concussion for 20 hours or so. I then was, what we call, so I realized I was not thinking, but I knew exactly that I was on the way out somewhere. Then I recollected myself. It was a little shaky. It was not a feeling. I was quite aware of it. It was more a spacious understanding, but it was that also not. What it really, on one level, it was, oh, now I lose it. It was a kind of understanding, and what I identified it with it, or learned in it, was what you now just mentioned, craving. In that understanding, I learned not about this craving, and that was real almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as sensation almost, but refined and understanding. And it taught me how to stay in the position of a witness. And I noticed the breath is going going kind of out, and I wanted it back. And any little dot of wanting it back was craving.
Yeah.
That was
Absolutely.
something.
Yeah.
And then I realized something more. I remember it became a big space, and in this craving, I recognized the beauty and the more authenticity of being the witness. And in that I saw very clearly this craving and could let go at one moment. For it, I felt I am on an edge. If I don't make it, and that I understood, I will be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Oh, let me think. Yes. And when the breath came, you know, there is a craving in having the breath. Big craving was it came. I spoke, or it's just mentioned, the authenticity I recognized of being the witness. And in that I saw the craving. And that was related to the breath. You know, we have a problem when we cannot breathe or when we want a breath. And that was so refined, there I saw the craving. And that kind of put me into a different position. And the craving can be very fine.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it was so subtle. It was, but I felt if I don't stay and realize now a little bit more, I will not kind of make it somehow. I was in that position. I didn't think on dying or so, but it was serious. Because I learned, you know, from Dr. Lisa, it had nothing actually to do with the brain even. It was more, what he said, the this sympathetic sympathetic what?
Nervous system.
Nervous system was shattered. Yeah, I couldn't get and that craving was the right breath to come, the right breath. And that what I call now the authenticity of being the witness. Oh, but that was a pure thing. And it was spacious, but totally it was non-stop of any doing. Yeah. Even so, the breath came, I just, anyway, the breath came, and there came the craving. And you know what happened? That refinedness breath, it wasn't the usual anymore, maybe prana, whatever they may call. It did go back before it came closer.
Oh.
I couldn't. So I learned now almost to be non-breathing, nothing, absolutely nothing. And then when I was that stiff, there was a stiffness in the relaxedness. Then it would go back. It would return. It was like this coming, and here came that millimeter, this little dot. It wasn't a dot, it was more a thread of non-doing, totally. But I understood that something is here which is very serious. If I do move what we can see as craving, I cannot do it. I will not make it to come to my good breath. It really won't move away when it was here. And what came, the craving is coming from the breath. There comes this, you have hard breath, and you think you have a good breathing, and so on, and there is suddenly tight here. That opened, but to sustain that openness and not touch it in any way, well, what shall I say? Suddenly I was present again in the kind of, was not the same, but I could, yeah. And that identified and could recognize, since you mentioned, I got it all back in me when I listened, when you said it hasn't had any feeling, the origination aspects have no, the 12, they don't have feeling. What was it? Perception. No, there is no perception in the 12 origination. Yes, so it was, but it was also no the ordinary feeling. Anyway, the most interesting aspect was absolutely the craving is total, not craving. Yeah, and I recognized when it came, when it was craving. I cannot remember where it was connecting itself, but it was separated. Then I also realized this kind of how it all has to come together. What I could think, I understood that I was somehow casted out, and could, another thing was it, I had somehow a thought someone was involved in my accident. I understood. And the minute I related to that, the breath went away. And there I learned any negativity cannot be present. Now that shot me out of myself. But I then learned, I could learn it right whilst I was doing it. So it was somehow of a rebreathing myself, maybe. And the finest things were showing. One of the finest was when I realized that it was their fault with my doggy also. I realized the leash was not right, so I wouldn't have fallen. I understood. And you know, the minute I understood, that was not, I don't know, it was probably a thought, I lost what I had put together. And I lost, yes, there's a spaciousness, the purity I realized, the authenticity of the breath, of being the witness, there's a difference. Actually, the witness understands everything, not my mind. It blew my mind. So all the problem I had, and still have, cannot walk very well. I had no coordination. Give me kind of good tips in what is perception, what is the authenticity of being the witness, and what not to do to avoid craving. And it was so fine. So it was, whilst the breath kind of came, and there comes the craving. It is like, come, yeah? Right. And I could hold it, not to do that. I don't know.
Excellent.
And then I was happy and went. Also, everyone in the hospital said, no, you cannot go, you cannot walk, and so on. I went to the garrison meeting. You know about that. In New York, where 250 teachers were meeting, I had an invitation. And I could not walk, I couldn't comb my hair, I couldn't do any. I couldn't lift my leg. It was a real downer in which I was. So, and when I realized, and I now started to remember or realize it's going, the breath. So, and now I guided. It was not even a guiding. It was a total stillness throughout all energy, and in this case I saw it as more authenticity, authentic, being the witness which understands, and not my mind.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you letting me experience, remember it.
Is Bingo still around?
Yes, but because of that accident, he was holding me, instigating my falling. I had C's candy box in my hand, and at the table where we are getting our food served, was sitting about 8 people waiting for my dessert. And I didn't see anything except these 8 people expecting of my C's candy. And so didn't see Bingo. Bingo had gone out from under the table, where the big table where the refrigerator is, with a leash which brought him out of his bed to the other side, to the sink, where you have the coffee there. And I didn't see him. I just saw everybody's expectation for this chocolate. So with the chocolate box in my hand, didn't see the leash from here to here. Here was at the sink, so I flew from like this and hit this region where the carpet and the metal are matching. You should have heard me screaming. Then they brought me to somehow a accommodation which is a emergency, yeah? And they didn't see anything wrong with me. They gave me morphine. I had a little broken this one. I came back. I don't remember till next afternoon anything. 2 women were staying with me and said they were praying I was going. Anything they gave me in the hand, it fell. And I don't remember these 24 hours at all. But I remember what I did then. I realized, so it is also not a thinking. It does not, it's also not a thinking. Even the thought, which was not very was kind of a little bit finding fault. Mm-hmm. And then that was the greatest surprise for me. Suddenly, instead, I thought it is there, the breath. I was really in attentiveness, thought, realized I don't do anything, no craving. But when it came, the breath went backwards. Yeah. And then that taught me the further things to do. And that's where I realized it's not thinking, it's not even observing, there is no observer. Then the slightest negativity is giving you a flap. Don't do that. That's not it. Right. That's not the purity.
That's right. That's right.
And then I went to Garrison.
You did?
Yes, no one could hold me. I knew I am in me. That I knew. And so, some very generous student gave me first-class ticket. So I was taking my wheelchair with me, and there I had students from Portland and here, and they changed navigating me in the wheelchair. So I was everywhere bored. Well, I played beautifully baby there. You know, they combed my hair, and they went to the hairdresser to get another hair piece that I look fancy. And then they put me in a shower and set me then. So then came somebody from Portland, he was, and I was then on the edge of the bed waiting. I had some attendant, one student, a social worker in New York who volunteered for me. I couldn't do could not hold anything. But I could listen to it. I could work in me, and I could understand. Couldn't stand up, even. So it was that I went there, for which I fought, really, all the sisters and so on there. And they didn't understand that I wanted to go, and I could go because my mind was okay. Yeah. By the way, most of the people in that hospital, that was a different one than I should have gone, were kind of dementia. Oh. And so they thought when I was lifted out of the bed for the part, so they thought I'm doing not right. I'm also here. I was released dementia.
Really?
Yeah, well, that was something which you cannot call a hospital or so. It was the total wrong place. They didn't know where to bring me. I was not in my real place. No, anyway, so I wanted to tell them, I have to go, please leave me. And then I said, oh yeah, you can get blood clots and this and this. And so in my despair that they held me and didn't want to put me into the truck or so to go home. And I said, well, listen, whatever you say, you don't understand, please let me go. What better, when they said you may die with a blood clot, you don't understand, but I have to tell it to you. What better death or dying can I have on the way to the Buddha? And so they didn't understand it and they let me go. And then over there, I said I played baby. Everything was done. I only listened, and I only listened and held myself. It was very sensitive, this new experience, what I went in. It was like a newborn thing. So when a deeper breath came, I would hold it and then be first present in deep attention till that craving left me. And then I could surrender to what was happening. Oh my boy, I did go through. But in a way, I feel I learned something beyond what I did before. This craving, that is a bummer. It's not just it's to Bhante. I recognize the craving in the very fine breath, and it was not really a breath. The breath, I had to open my mouth, so that this movement of this came, and that was Dharma. I couldn't do that. It destroyed what I had put together. And so I guided myself finer and finer recognition of the craving.
Excellent.
Yeah. I still enjoy when I see the devil. It's the devil. No, anyway, thank you to let me.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
By the way, did you notice that I put a new Buddha on there?
Yes, I did that
when,
one.
When you walk from over here to over there,
yeah,
his eyes follow you.